do. But what I'm doing instead is focusing on a single material and to talk about the way that material has transformed our cities, the way it was initially thought of back in the day in terms of urban renewal, and how we and other designers are rethinking what glass is about and what it can do, and hopefully bringing a new level of engagement to the city that we're all starting to enjoy. And we've done a couple of projects here in New York, the High Line, as you probably know, and the renovation of Lincoln Center, that rely heavily on notions of glass and framing to achieve their urbanistic effects, and I'll say the landscape effects as well. Glass didn't always start out as a whimsical or provocative material. In modernism, the goal was to strip most materials down to their essence, and in the case of glass, that meant transparency, how to make it not be there. I also think that glass was thought to be to reflect honesty and verisimilitude, and let's see. And our fascination with glass, of course, started back in the 20s, and 21, Friedrichstrasse skyscraper by Mies. Clearly, Mies had a confusing relationship with glass, though transparency was, in fact, the takeaway that we all believe Mies left for us. Even in this charcoal rendering, you see how thick and lush the glass was portrayed. It's complicated, glass. And yet, how we think of modernism, and especially sort of the functionalist and minimalist modernism that Mies championed, is that the materials are doing one thing and one thing only. So the steel is supporting, or is making the building up, and the glass is an infill material, and it's simply about not being there, about going away, about merging the inside and the outside, and that it's performing at its highest and best use when you least understand its presence. And I would say that that exploration continues today. Architects like Sana, here at the Toledo Museum of Glass Edition, where the kind of virtuosic performance of glass, both in terms of visual clarity, but also in terms of structural braggadocio, is really the goal. So these sort of these ideas that were set up in modernism continue, and you guys may have seen already just a couple blocks away the Apple Store, which was perfectly pleasant at 50 pieces of glass last year, but now has 18 pieces of glass, and is exactly the same size and performs exactly the same function, and yet the goal is to continue to push glass technically, to make it clearer, to use low iron glass so that it has no color, and to use it structurally. There's no metal in this cube any longer. It is quite something. Now, backing up a little bit, we were asked to frame this argument a little bit personally, and how we came to do what we do, I suppose. And I will say that I went to school during this time in the 80s. The Portland building had been finished in 82. I started school at Rice in 82. So guess what was being shown, even in academia, was postmodernism in its sort of imagistic fashion. And glass and minimalism and essentialism and functionalism just had sort of fallen off the map, and we were left to deal with this. Now, I find it pretty interesting because other folks that were working or not working, as the case may be, with Hayek, were poking around in also very postmodern ways, if you want to say that, or even post-structuralist ways, at how architecture lost its meaning, and we're thinking about a much more complex layering of gesture and experience. And these were the guys that I ended up sort of falling in love with. This, of course, constructed posthumously, and then who could forget the cheeky drawings that were found in Delirious New York. And while Rem Koolhaas's starting point was clearly an examination of modernism, his kind of investigations were sexy and layered and about history and about index and really looking at society the way it was. Round about 1989, my last year in undergraduate school, Diller and Scofidio came to town. And they showed this project, which was in this very building, called Parasite. And this was a huge eye-opener for me. All of a sudden, we could have a layered, meaningful, confusing commentary on contemporary culture that was also modern and also used glass and lenses, let's say, and other devices of framing and making image, flattening image, as a way to make new content. In this show, probably one of the first of its kind, I think it was the first show an architect did in the project room, it was about itself. It was completely solipsistic. There were cameras sprinkled all over the museum, photographing people as they came and went, taking those images, doing things with them. You couldn't quite be sure what was being done with them, and then positioning them on these series of very fanciful armatures in the project room. They presented these kinds of drawings, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is this most amazing merger of sort of, kind of modernism with the purity of intention, mixed with this sort of cheeky, unknown confusion of result. What are we really witnessing? Are we witnessing ourselves? Are we witnessing a manipulation of ourselves? This is one of the views of one of the visitors. And the visitors were being duped in a way. I mean, they were coming to see themselves. They came to the Museum of Modern Art. You wanted to see some Picassos. But instead, they were seeing themselves. And I thought that was brilliant. And it parallels some of my personal fascinations and also things that we work on together in the studio. And looking is one of our primary preoccupations. Other artists are also interested in looking at looking. Thomas Struth, for instance, in his museum series. What is so fascinating about that? And how does it implicate glass in a new concept for urbanity, for making our cities? And I would say that glass has been transformed into working in many, many different ways. It's not simply about verisimilitude, about transparency. It's about manipulation. It's about turning things on their head. And I think we think that this is one of the most amazing things that glass can do. And we believe that we have helped take glass out of this place where it's thought of to be simply about not being there, to in fact very much being there. And this is a piece, a theater piece that we did called Jet Lag, where there's lifetime action, pre-recorded film, and a camera with its lens, its glass, its window, putting it all together and representing it to the studio. It is through glass that I think that our practice has been able to transfer and translate some of our fascinations into built work. This being the ICA, completed in 2006, on this amazing waterfront site where one of our primary gestures was to completely strip all of the known qualities of the site away after having gone through layers and layers of art and various ways of getting up to the fourth floor. you're presented with a space that is tipped down, it's vertiginous, gravity doesn't exactly work right, and you see no horizon. You simply see the world presented back as part of the museum. So the museum is again duping you, putting the museum and its site back on display. And then similar engagements with the city at the High Line through theatrical moments such as the 10th Avenue Overlook, where we cut holes in the girders and replace them with giant pieces of glass that not only turn the city into a theater, but actually reverse the gaze and have people on the High Line acting as protagonists in the ongoing saga of urban life. And then just a couple of examples of more contemporary glass that really is changing the way glass is working. Here, this is Rex office building in Turkey. I forget the name of the company, but slumped glass, which actually structures itself and yet still maintains the verisimilitude, the transparency of modern glass. So this is becoming a kind of postmodern glass, I guess. And then Chipperfield's quite elegant Des Moines Public Library, where you're led to believe that this is a copper building, and yet, in fact, it's transparent, and only at night does it reveal its transparency from the outside. Quite an elegant solution. And then to in other places that glass is being used as not as transparent at all, simply as in some other way. Here in Nelson Atkins, as a beacon, as something that just glows. There are a million ways glass has been taken into a new position, and I'd rather talk about our work, so I'm going to move on to that. So I'm going to structure this. I have no idea how long I have. I'll just go really fast through the slides when I get to the 5-minute mark. But 50s, New York. All the rage, glass, Lever Brothers, 1952, gorgeous building. I'm just going to start going fast now. Manufacturer Hanover's Trust Building, 1954. These were the things that had come on stage post-war New York. Transparency was king. The concept that these giant pieces of glass that are 25 feet high would reveal the insides and make the operations of the bank and the kind of policy of bank transparent and honest. You know, that glass was playing a role in our culture in a very particular way at the peak of modernism. Cut forward to 58, where the completion of the Seagram Building, which is probably the best known glass tower in all of New York. Absolutely stunning, working in opposition to its surroundings, of course. And yet, there were certain critical decisions that were made here, such as the tinting of the glass to this caramel color, which stop the gaze, that don't present the inner workings, that don't let you think about honesty, and in fact promote reflectivity and refraction. Michael Hayes has indicated this is in a way one of the first postmodern structures. And then we were given the opportunity to come in at a later point and in the late 90s and remake a very significant portion of this project, the Brasserie Restaurant, which ironically is located in, or it's located in a base which ironically has absolutely no windows. So this all-glass building, which we think of as completely transparent, has absolutely no connection to the outside. So this led us to an interrogation into glass, into vision, and how, and into Mies actually, and into Philip Johnson a little bit. How can we reposition glass to work in many new ways, and so to make new glass, to make postmodern glass. So the first thing we did is we were thinking about the connection to the street. Not only is the door up 4 feet, there's also no windows, of course. We offset the main dining room, made it so that you walk into a blank wall. No one can be witnessed coming into the restaurant. Instead, their images are captured, they're put onto a video screen and portrayed sequentially as they enter over the bar. The images are blurred so that you could have your mistress meet you, and no one can actually figure out who it is. So dishonest glass as opposed to honest glass, a stair which is completely constructed of glass. In the back room, we tipped these plates of glass on the wall, structured the banquettes on them. So in fact, they're working structurally, not about vision at all, except that they do hide and reveal artworks that are hanging on the wall behind. I'm going to speed up to Lincoln Center. This is the object of the talk, and I have 5 minutes, so this is going to be very fast. Here they are, the modern masters that we all know, Harrison, Johnson, Abramovitz, all of those folks at the Lincoln Center. This in the publicity photo, but this is actually a working session. It was a very difficult time, and as mentioned, the idea of slum clearance and urban renewal was motivated by very particular conditions. And here is the San Juan Hill, the area destined for clearance that became Lincoln Center, there it is under construction. I'm sorry, it's a very blurry image. But the idea was indeed to make a necropolis, to put culture and kind of on an elitist plinth, and it's outrageous. I went through and looked at the old meeting minutes in preparation for this, and there are things that are said, such as I'm going to quote from the meeting minutes: "Although the people of New York do not generally walk, because the city is not a pleasant place to stroll, it was agreed that people would arrive by means other than bus, subway, or car." So they sort of acknowledged that the pedestrians still exist in New York, amazingly, and yet here is San Juan Hill prior to demolition. Check it out. There are people on the sidewalks. There are pedestrians even. Imagine that. There are people on the stoops. It was a thriving, vibrant neighborhood that was turned into this. The stone base with a scant 25 windows in its entirety, 65th Street. And here's a stone base and the steep stair that you had to ascend to get to the front doors. All of the rears of these theaters were positioned on the back streets. So very inhospitable. Here's the North Plaza just before the renovation. I mean, it looks like the forecourt to a prison camp. And I mean, no offense, because we actually really love Lincoln Center, and this is how we won the job, by saying, gosh, Lincoln Center was actually pretty amazing, but it did some things wrong. Let's get it right. Let's get it right. And the thing that we did, I think, that was the primary thing that we did in making it right was the use of glass. Here's what you had to contend with when you came to 65th Street for a show. 300-foot bridge, horrible. When thinking about glass, the original designers were really into it. In fact, they thought, because of Leverhulme and Seagram Building and manufacturers Hanover, it was just the rage. Everything wanted to be glass, but they didn't talk about it being a way to make connections to the city. Instead, they were thinking about it as an object of a glow, a kind of a attractor. And then here are the front doors. This is Alice Tully Hall. The front door is it's 9 feet tall and under this heavy, brutalist building. So the first act that we brought to Lincoln Center was what we call an architectural striptease. It was simply to strip the base, the plinth, away from every building as much as we could, and to open up gesturally with height and even some bold actions, such as a slice on Broadway. So nothing had ever met the city grid before in Lincoln Center the same way, even though it was built, parts of it were built on a diagonal. And this is what you get, a new kind of urban appeal, which is merging indoors and out, which lets people visually and physically into lobbies. Here's one of the things we did with the glass. We made three-dimensional windows that mimic, in a way, the original windows of Beluski on the Juilliard building, and yet structure themselves in a very unusual way. This is the Broadway facade. Here you see this kind of blurring of indoors and out through the use of glass with absolutely no visible means of support. While there are some cables there, I lie. Here are the steps that just go from inside to out in a theater piece, which uses that clear glass as a thing that goes away, turning the whole center inside out, making going to the theater part of the theater itself. Here's one of the cables. We managed to get bigger pieces of glass than the place up the street, and this will continue to improve. For the first time, Juilliard had places exposed to the street, performances could happen. There was a reciprocity of inside out. This is for School of American Ballet, a little theater that's hanging in air, which uses glass. Structurally, you can see here where it's actually attached, these bars that people hang all of their body weight onto the glass itself. And then in Alice Tully Hall, not quite glass, but the concept that wood could glow, and we originally investigated glass, ended up with a plastic. All of these as ways of saying glass is not your big old transparent pane of glass. It actually does a whole bunch more, and all of these ways of using it in Lincoln Center for us contributed to its reincarnation as a place that corrected the wrongs of the urban wrongs that it got itself into. Here again with the video blades, which show show inside the backstage spaces. Are they real? Are they fake? No, these are all faked. We made those in our studio. But still, the point is, what is it? It makes you think, So that's the whole point. Here is a little bit of green, finally, landscape, the lawn on top of the restaurant, and glass holding that up. The lawn is open to everyone, not all the time, as you know, they're shutting it down, but it's basically an egalitarian space on top of an elitist restaurant. If you have been there, you know how expensive it is, but we do, the glass is really putting everything on display, framing it. This is the kitchen. You can see Jonathan Benno, the chef, working all the time. The glass comes up. Its vision, at one point, it crosses a line, and it all of a sudden becomes a handrail. And then the rethinking of the entry using glass as a way to message. Here is a canopy that we made, 85 feet, one column of glass, but guess what? We had originally designed this in glass. And I'm about to stop. I have 2 more slides. That was worked out. That was going to be our canopy. Sorry we didn't give that to you. And that is Lincoln Center. Thank you very much.